Hi, everyone, and welcome to YouTube Insights Hangout on Air. I'm Tara Walpert Levy. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is our quarterly Insights Jam, where we talk about the latest insights for brand marketers and discuss, so what does that really mean for you with industry experts? In this episode, we're going to be talking about everything from the World Cup to what the biggest social network actually is and why that may surprise you, to how to take advantage of the mobile and social opportunities with online video. And as always, you can find the latest YouTube Insights report at thinkwithgoogle.com/YouTube-insights. Today, we've got 4 awesome experts with us to help share their point of view and bring these insights to life. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and let each of you introduce yourselves, please. Adam, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Adam Schlacker. I'm the head of reactivation at Digital LBI in North America. I basically oversee our media capability in the U.S. as well as all the major advertising media partnerships, activation that we set up, deals, things that we've done around the front, things that we've done with YouTube, of course, and work with a variety of our key clients, American Express being the biggest.
Awesome. Welcome. Todd, you want to go next?
Sure. Todd Barish. I head up our strategic partnerships group at Maker Studios. One of the original folks over here. Been here about 3 years at Maker. So creating branding content and everything under the sun.
Very cool, and we're thrilled to have you. Mike, you're practically a regular here, Mike. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me again. So I'm Mike Henry. I'm the CEO of Outrigger Media. We're a software and analytics company, and our platform, OpenSlate, measures and scores YouTube content on its value to advertisers. So we're really focused on the role that content plays in brand advertising success.
Great. And then last, but certainly not least, Hamish, we're excited to welcome you to the show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Hamish Priest. I work at Unilever, and I look after global media for our Dove brand, and I'm also responsible for brand publishing with the capability across Unilever brands.
Very cool. Welcome. Have you guys noticed how look after seems to be the latest turn of phrase for describing what we do? I like that. I look after things.
That's because none of us actually do anything.
So the latest YouTube Insights report talks about how passions drive purchases, which sounds very exciting on every front. We thought there's no better way to start that conversation than to pick up on one of the biggest passions of the last couple of months, which is the World Cup. I don't know how much you guys actually watched the World Cup. I watched some. I actually had to speak right after the U.S.-Germany match, so I was very anxious about that, and it worked out well because I could stand up and say it's just like investing in digital. Even when you lose, you win. But what we're seeing on YouTube is it turns out that people were enormous fans of the content, of course, of the matches themselves, but they were also enormous fans of the ads. Since April, people have watched more than 1.7 billion minutes of World Cup advertising on YouTube. And just to put that in perspective, that's roughly 6 times more than what we saw in this year's Super Bowl. So, we saw a lot of the most highly viewed and shared spots coming, probably not surprisingly, from sports and entertainment brands. Folks like Nike, Beats by Dre, Adidas, Samsung, all of those taking top spots on the YouTube ads leaderboard. But I'm curious, we start with you, Adam, because you see a whole host of folks. When you think across the portfolio that you see and the events that just transpired, what did you see that was special about this World Cup or any different from 4 years ago for brands?
I think you hit on it with passion. Clearly, you have one of the most passionate audiences of football than soccer, depending what country you're in, being one of the most popular sports on earth. And brands embraced that, and they stepped up in a way that created content more than advertising that was relevant and spoke to the sort of hearts and minds of fans, whether that was incorporating players or incorporating people in everyday situations, playing soccer, like some of those non-ad ads that got passed around the web, or creating compelling content that went along with what was happening in the game or the games themselves. But I mean, hits, as you saw, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of misses. I think we have a long way to go before brands find the right and most appropriate ways to seize the moment as things are happening. Restraint as things are happening, and not necessarily jump into a conversation or a moment in time just because it's happening and we're all living in this real-time world. So it was definitely bigger and better than I remembered it. I think it's certainly more buzzy than what's happened in some standalone events like the World Series or the Super Bowl because of the length of time. And over that time, I think smart brands developed a narrative that continued throughout. And I think we're going to start to see more and more of that, particularly in live global events.
Cool. Are there any brands that pop to mind for you? I mean, we certainly have the People's Choice on the ads leaderboard, but anything that just really impressed you as a marketer?
I mean, the stuff that Beats produced, I thought was really compelling. It felt like you were experiencing what the rituals were that a lot of players were going through. The common denominator, of course, being music, and I think a lot of people could relate to that. And of course, I think Nike did some brilliant work. We saw a host of things, but also I think the things that we saw, at least in the U.S., were probably limited. I didn't get to see what happened around the globe in other markets. And curious to hear from some of the other guys the things that they saw that they think they might have topped what we were exposed to here, especially given the sort of rabid fandom in some countries and markets versus the U.S.
Cool. Well, Mike, you see a whole lot of this at scale as well, and not just here, but more broadly internationally. What trends did you see around the World Cup? Mike, you there? All right, Mike's going to miss his opportunity.
Hello, am I
there?
here?
Okay, good. You're back.
Sorry about that.
I didn't want to deny you the opportunity. We were talking about how a number of brands took advantage of YouTube and other platforms in this year's World Cup, and Adam was saying he was interested in hearing more about what other folks had seen, and in particular also what they'd seen around the globe.
Yep.
And I know you guys see really fully at scale. Wondering what you saw this time around.
Yeah, so what we saw was, with OpenSlate, we measure and score about 220,000 channels on YouTube. And of those 200 or so channels, 200,000 channels, about 2,000 are brands. And so of those 2,000 brands, we identified about 20 that had really well-defined World Cup strategies, content strategies, and we took a special look at those. And 8 of those 20 appeared in our top 50 brands as of July 15th. It started around the end of the World Cup. And just 2 of them, 2 out of the 8 that we were looking at, Nike football and Adidas football, were sort of full-time soccer channels. And the rest, like Beats by Dre was on that list, Visa, McDonald's, they were all, what we're talking about here. They were appealing to a passion in a really authentic and meaningful way, and putting a lot of great creative behind it. And I got to say, the one that stood out the most for me was the goal creative for McDonald's, which I don't know if they produced that especially for YouTube, but it got about 6 million views. And what was awesome about McDonald's and their thought process in terms of appealing not just to the passion of soccer, but also to the people of YouTube and the way people consume content on YouTube, is that the video was soccer trick shots. And anybody that follows YouTube knows that that is a genre, and Dude Perfect, with his 3 million subscribers and 22 million monthly views, does a great job of that. And in McDonald's case, they made a minute and change long video that looked like a Dude Perfect highlights reel, but specifically for World Cup soccer. And it was awesome. So, we saw 8 brands do a really good job, and we saw a few absolutely kill it.
Cool. That's a great example. I really enjoyed that one too. It's interesting. Neither of you mentioned one thing that we saw that really sort of leapt out, which was the percentage of viewership that was happening this time around versus 2010 on mobile. Just absolutely went through the roof. Which, I guess it shouldn't be terribly surprising, right? It's all over the news. And in the U.S. on YouTube now, 45% of the total views in general are on mobile. But it's interesting to see how people are treating these screens, especially, you hear everyone talking about their second screen strategy, but clearly, in particular for the 18 to 34-year-old set, that smartphone is their first screen. So, I'm curious, and Todd, maybe we go to you on this one since you're in the process of making content every day. When you think about the multi-screen experience that's available through YouTube or other platforms, and think about sort of how you build either specifically for that or for a cross-screen experience, how does that affect your strategy, your execution, the actual creative?
Yeah, I think for us, it's, obviously mobile is massively important. Like you said, about 45% of our viewership happens on mobile devices, whether tablets or handheld.
So you're right on the average.
Yeah, you got it. We do a lot of techniques to make sure that our content displays well on mobile. So making sure thumbnails are rendered properly or sized properly so that they work correctly on mobile devices. Things like annotations are turned off on mobile, so we make sure to duplicate those links out on description boxes, right? But I think for us, it's really about creating some cultural urgency around the content. So, I pointed to the 45% average on our content, but look at something like Epic Rap Battles of History. In the first week of launch on those videos, we generally see almost 60% of those views come across mobile. It's amazing. It's a huge spike.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, and it shows the fact that these kids, these millennials that are largely our audience on that program specifically, they want to see the content immediately, right? They want to be the first ones to watch the new Epic Rap Battle and talk to their friends about it. So they do it wherever they can first, and traditionally that's, or not traditionally, but more and more that's on their handheld device. So I think for us it's really about creating great content that has a sense of urgency around it, where it is kind of the water cooler talk, or whatever the kids call it these days, and there's them to go view it now and go share it with their friends. So I think, like I said, there are certain techniques we look at to make sure the videos look great on mobile, but I don't know if it's necessarily a programming strategy. I think it's really create great content and make people want to see it immediately.
Cool. Well, I feel like I can't turn around these days without seeing Epic Rap Battles, so congratulations on that.
Thanks.
And it's interesting, that distinction of when you think about mobile, is it simply about enabling the same great content to be experienced in a high quality fashion across every screen, or is there anything that is more particular to the on-the-go experience? Hamish, how's Unilever think about that? How do you think about mobile and connecting with your target consumers through multiple platforms? Uh-oh, we don't have you. One of the challenges with new platforms is you get a little bit of this. So you gotta improvise on the fly.
How about now?
Yep, you're back.
Is my everything there? Yeah. Okay. So, sorry about that. I think mobile is a really fascinating area. I think increasingly mobile is an acid test for brands in terms of their marketing communication. And by that I mean the brands that really get mobile are the ones which are going to be doing high quality advertising overall, because it really pushes you to think about the person, because it's such a personal device. Mobile provides us with direct access and personal access to people. And I think that requires brands to really make sure that they're creating meaningful value for people. And because of the personalization opportunity that mobile provides, I think as companies become more mobile first, you'll see a lot more personalized, customized content. So mobile first really means putting people first. I think that really means bringing a lot more content, a lot more personalized content, the moment, person, and the screen as well, as we pointed out. And that's what we really see in developed markets. I think that in developing markets, mobile becomes even more important because it is their primary screen for young people. And so in some places like India, where there are media dark areas where we can't even use traditional channels to reach people, Unilever's created a media channel through mobile where all consumers can call a Unilever service and get 15 minutes of entertainment intermittent with advertising. And so that's a really great example of how I think when brands take a people first approach to their communications, that it's really on smartphones. I think that's the kind of challenge that mobile presents, is really thinking about the individual and the moment.
Yeah, I think those are great points, and in particular, you make a terrific point that it's very U.S. centric to think of mobile as the first screen only for sort of the under 35 set, when in so many places around the world, in many cases, it's the only screen. So I think that's a really great point. And it's interesting. I mean, I think mobile is now sort of at a sufficiently buzzy point that it's it's possibly even eclipsing or it's certainly the only thing threatening the buzziness of social, right? And you hear lots of people saying, oh, mobile is the new social and so on. And whatever you think about it, they're clearly two concepts that are very tightly tied. And when you talk about personalization and the opportunities that are available to do that through mobile or other one-to-one connection points, it's particularly interesting to see how that multiplies when the one-to-one becomes not just brand to person, friend to friend about brand. And it's funny, Compete reported last month that YouTube has now passed Facebook as the largest social media site. And some recent stats from Millward Brown show that 18 to 34-year-olds are sharing or commenting on videos on YouTube 10 times more than on other video sites. And I'm just curious, Adam, does that surprise you? The 10 times number is a little dramatic. And I'm not sure that everybody today really even thinks of YouTube as a social platform, much less a social platform that's actually bigger than Facebook.
Right.
How do you think about that?
I mean, YouTube is a really robust community, and it's a community of creators, it's a community of fans, it's a community of storytellers, people providing utility. It's quite rich. And in any community, there's going to be conversation, and there's going to be opportunity for people to participate in different ways, customers, brands, and creators alike. So I definitely have that view. I think we definitely have that view of YouTube being a really robust social network. Bigger than Facebook? I don't know, hard to say. I guess it depends whose numbers you're looking at or in what context. But I don't think that actually matters as much. I think what matters is the sort of context with which that's within. There's a bit of a tongue twister. It's only Thursday, right? All right. It's been a long week. But I think for smart creators and smart marketers to really harness the power of that community and those conversations, they have to speak in the language of what resonates well on YouTube. And I think, to your point about we've all seen epic rap battles everywhere. It's like we've seen the great marketing push that you guys have made. I think a lot of people are aware of the type of content and communities that exist on YouTube and that they can engage with in really unique ways there. And that might be different than what they do on other social networks, and that's okay. There are sort of distinct reasons and reasons of being and reasons for brands to believe in different platforms and networks. Recently about their activity around the World Cup. Obviously, you guys played a big role in it as well. So did Facebook. We were all platforms that connect people to different things in different ways, oftentimes in pretty complementary ways, oftentimes working with it all. They're not these walled gardens that exist in isolation that you have to have something that's really super distinct to fit in each place and never the twain shall meet. So it's not surprising at all. And the stat that you mentioned earlier about consumption via mobile. Mobile is social. All media is both if it's done right today. And as the sort of lines continue to blur, I just think we'll continue to see more and more of it. For live events, for all forms of content that get produced and distributed, and for all different types of communities, as they sort of come together.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting because we hear a lot about how brands are putting together complementary platforms and how that's working well for them. What we often hear struggle is thinking about how do you apply some of these things to different formats, right? So in particular at YouTube, one of the things we hear a lot about is like, well, how do I really take advantage of the social nature of video in a way that's either similar or different from text or image? And Hamish, I know this is a big part of what you look after at Unilever. How do you guys think about the social aspects of online video, and what advice would you have for any of the brands out there that are trying to be more aggressive with it?
Hey, sorry. I think it's really interesting to look at YouTube as a social network versus just a video channel, because it makes you kind of approach it and think about it in a different way. And I think that one of the things that we've done as we approach YouTube and creating content for consumers on YouTube is trying to think about how it's going to resonate best. And so we tend to partner a lot with vloggers and people who are native to the channel and the era of YouTube in some ways, in order to kind of be the voice of our brands online. And I feel that getting that right is really fundamental to getting YouTube right. Obviously, when it comes to pre-roll advertising and those kinds of opportunities, you can be a bit more, a bit more sure that your typical TV spot can be adjusted a bit. But if you really want to win on YouTube in terms of developing bespoke content, I think really being mindful about that social nature of it is important. And even more so, looking at the relationships that the YouTubers have with their fans is really inspiring for me as a brand marketer, because it says that this is where brands could get to in terms of how they dialogue with consumers online. So I think that mindset of thinking about it as a social network is really important.
Smart. You're looking for partnerships. Hamish, have you met Todd? Todd, Hamish?
Hello.
And to that point, I mean, Todd, we hear this a lot, actually, that a lot of places where brands are seeing the most success or having the most comfort is in partnership with content creators who are native to whatever platform they're trying to make progress on, in this case, YouTube. When brands come to you and ask for your secrets of success, what do you say and how do you help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit on a lot of it, but the fact is this is a massive, massive social platform, and when we look at it, we look at this relationship between our content creators and their fans, and it's very much a different relationship than traditional celebrity has with their fan base, right? There is no wall between content creator and fan, right? They feel like they know one another and they can have an informal conversation. So, we really drive off that aspect of that relationship. So when we are working with brands, we try to get them to understand, this passionate fan base exists and moves a lot quicker when these folks talk to them. More so than if you have traditional celebrity talk to them, especially on this platform. And two, utilizing the social aspects of the platform, right? It affords us the ability to have comments, to have discussions back and forth. And certainly when we're working with local brands, we bring that aspect into the conversation. We did a great piece of work a while back now, but with a film called Pitch Perfect, where we invited thousands of fans to participate in a sing-along with one of our YouTube stars. It was something where they all jumped on board because they not only wanted to be seen and be part of the experience, but they wanted to see their friend, Mike Tompkins, who was the star of the video, do really well, right? They want to empower these guys to be bigger and better and do greater things. And those things happen when brands connect, right, with the actual content creator. And so it's a really interesting dynamic where the fans are really rooting for these guys and gals to kind of extend the level of their content, and increasingly that's on behalf of what they're doing with brands. It's really kind of a symbiotic partnership, more so here than I think we see across any other platform.
Cool, that makes sense. I can't believe I missed that Pitch Perfect promotion. That sounds awesome. We got to make the next version of this a cappella. But now, just building off what each of you has said, we've been talking about passions and how you tap into passions, and there are different ways to do that on the go and in conversations with friends and by tying into big live events. But, the question is, to what extent does that really drive sales at the end of the day? And, we recently did some research with TNS and Ogilvy that drove a lot of the insights in the report that suggested that tapping into these passions and interests is a tremendously powerful way to drive purchase. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. Are we smoking our own whatever the completion of that analogy is, or is this something that you're seeing more broadly? And so Mike in particular, when you think about sort of all the things that you see in terms of how brands and content creators are engaging on the platform and how consumers and people tell you they are sort of reacting to this, what's your hypothesis about does this actually move people to action, or is this just entertainment?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was a great report, and we're fascinated by the subject of passions and how you can succeed more based on how focused you are on passions. And we're actually working on some new research on that front right now. And what we've done is we've actually taken a look at subject matter density for 200,000 ad-supported channels on YouTube. And so what we're doing is we're sort of stack ranking them based on how much they publish into their primary publishing category. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right, so we're looking at, say, the top overall. So overall, of hundreds of categories, the amounts of content that a channel puts into its primary subject matter is about 14%. So that's what we found on average. And then we looked at the top 20,000, and that jumps up to 29%. So it's a huge difference between sort of the average and the average of the best. And then when you look at the top 1,000 channels, the amount of content that they publish into their particular passion, if you will, whether it's a brand or just a regular channel, is 44.6%. So from 14% to 29% to the best channels on YouTube, by any measure, are publishing almost half of their content into just one thing that they're really passionate about. And it makes a difference. I mean, the top 10% by that same stack rank has 192,000 subscribers versus the bottom, which only has 9,200 subscribers. So some really interesting.
That's fascinating. And I'm one of the things that jumps out most that I'm just curious about is I'm actually surprised those numbers aren't even higher, only from the standpoint of I'm just picturing Patagonia or a brand that has a clear passion point and wondering, what are even the best doing the other 51% of the time?
Well, there's hundreds of different things that you can do a video about. And even if you think about some of the biggest ones that are out there, I mean, PewDiePie, he's at the top of the list, actually, by any measure, but he's at the top of this list just about with regards to subject matter concentration. I think something like 88% that are, video games. But as you start to fan out and you think about all the different things that you could do a video about, you might be doing something different one day to the next. One day it's fashion, one day it's fitness, one day it's food.
Yeah.
And it can still be grouped around your personal brand as a YouTuber. But what we found, and we're going to release this research in a few weeks, is that unmistakably, undeniably, the more focused you are on a passion as a producer on YouTube, the more successful you are.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's interesting. That actually corresponds pretty tightly with what we saw in our research as well, because I remember TNS cited that I think 2/3 of beauty purchasers said that they were heavily influenced by the content on YouTube that let them visualize how those beauty products sort of would fit in with their lifestyle. And similarly, the other one that pops to mind is I think almost 3/4 of the auto purchasers said they were heavily influenced by YouTube because of how they could sort of see the in-action vehicle videos that let them sort of feel like they were behind the wheel of the car. So to your point, no one said it was influential because they had just this really inspirational discussion about, vulnerability and, global change, right? Maybe that actually is fantastic for selling products that relate more tightly to that, but that's interesting because it does align closely with what you're saying. Todd, I'm curious, you also have such a diverse base of creators and brands who would participate with you. How do you think about this topic of passions and using the ability to tap into people's passions to drive sales?
Yeah, so, we do have a really wide range of content creators. We represent about 55,000 of them now. And at first it was kind of a mishmash of content creators, and we've kind of solved that riddle by categorizing them by vertical. And then playing those different content creators, with each other, so that we do have a really strong presence when aligning, beauty fashionistas along with one another to create videos around products specifically. We have a number of brands working with us specifically on the beauty space. Like Mike alluded to before with PewDiePie, here's a guy who is really interested in indie video games, right? Seemingly a fairly niche market. But he plays them regularly. It is his main kind of content creation. And you see the fact that when we do integrate actual game titles into his content, they move off the shelf. And we have brand marketers coming back to us with the data to support the fact that we've lifted sales well over 30% in specific periods around indie video game titles alone. Furthermore, he's a guy who has a fan base that's so connected to everything he does that he did a campaign for charity water recently and raised over $1 million in a month period. Now think about that, and the fact that his audience is largely, 13 to 17-year-old kids?
A lot of piggy banks.
Adding to Indiegogo funds, right?
That's amazing.
Dads do it. They have to literally go through hurdles and jump over fences to give money to the guy. And they're doing it, and they're doing it at scale. And it's a pretty phenomenal story.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool. And Hamish, what about you? Are you guys seeing soap fly off the shelves based off of this stuff, or what? I think you might have to click in with us again.
Sorry, I was muted. So I think the best example we have is we've launched a YouTube channel in a number of markets called All Things Hair. And this started this worked a couple of years ago when we saw the massive opportunity through the number of searches that people are carrying out around their passion around hair care, whether it's for inspiration, around the styles they should have, or sort of solutions to kind of fix some of their hair issues. And we now have a channel with loads of content created by YouTubers, some of which features our brands. And within those pages, people can actually click through and add the products to their online carts. And so we're seeing really encouraging results with that strategy alone. So I think that playing to people's passions doesn't necessarily always mean the brand taking the lead. It could be proximity, which I think can be more authentic. And equally, I think that passions is a really clear way for brands to build relevance overall. So that's an approach which has been tried over time. I think that YouTube creates an additional opportunity to be even more relevant. The challenge for brands would be evolving their brand voice to work in a new YouTube-shaped media environment versus the 30-second slot they're used to occupying. So I think we're making great progress, but it's definitely an exciting area.
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge. I mean, many folks, especially many folks who are making the decision, can't stand more than 5 minutes of PewDiePie, despite the fact that he is one of the most popular celebrities, period, much less on YouTube. And thinking about sort of how to adapt for a much broader array of sort of content types and participation from their fans is really challenging. I'd be curious just to hear a little bit more about that. You say that you're making progress, and frankly, I observe Unilever as one of the more progressive on this front, but what have the objections been, and what has it taken for you guys to get comfortable?
The objections been to producing content for
just to adapting the voice, right? You were describing sort of adapting the voice from what.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's loads of examples. I mean, for example, with our small brand, we have a program where we're trying to give people ideas about what's for dinner, and I think it's just a weekly, monthly process of learning about what works and what doesn't, learning about how to produce the content most efficiently and effectively. And I think we've got great talent around the world with our partners, and so in South Africa we have someone who works on it full time, and she's awesome, and she's the voice of the brand. Whereas in other regions we've taken different approaches. So around the world, there are lots of different interesting approaches being taken, and we're in a process now of figuring out what are the winning formulas. So it's something that we're kind of trying to optimize all the time, really.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that will help a lot and that we get asked for is, it's great to hear all of the tremendous anecdotes or client instances about how a particular execution drove sales. But whenever you're moving to something new, and particularly to something that requires a shift in how you think about your entire strategy and creative like this, everybody wants to see the proof at scale, right? They want to see measurement of sales, of traffic at scale. And while I think we're making a lot of progress on that, it remains one of our thornier issues as an industry. So, what I see a lot of folks doing is focusing much more aggressively on some of the leading indicators of sales, right, that folks have always used, brand awareness, brand interest, et cetera, through some of the new tools that are available, whether it's Google's Brand Lift or any of the other solutions that are in market. And I see them sort of taking advantage of some of those tools in terms of the ability to more rapidly get more precise data and to use those to optimize campaigns, mid-flight in a way that you just couldn't do traditionally. But, again, this is something I think we're all still wrestling with. So Adam, I'm curious, because again, you probably see this across a much broader swath of clients. When you think about some of the measurement tools that are out there or that have emerged recently in the digital space, are they helping? Or is anyone using them? What do we need to do to sort of help fill in this gap between where we've been and where we'd like to be in terms of directly correlating online activity and sales?
So, that's the holy grail, right? Is how does this stuff in a known way and in a sort of significant quantity drive business? And oftentimes we're suffering from what an old colleague of mine would call analysis paralysis. You're overwhelmed by the data that we can get at. I could sit with Mike's team at OpenSlate and go through Slate scores all day to find video to target and find all these different levels of engagement. And it's great because it gives me insight and perspective that I never really had before. But I could go down a rabbit hole with it unless I'm coupling it with other data that helps me form a really robust picture of my consumer. and on one end and on the other end see like what metrics it actually drove. But when I do all that stuff in isolation, which oftentimes happens, not here of course, but at other places, you're sort of working against each other, or you're working against yourselves, and you're just throwing metrics that all sound well and good, but they're all sort of isolated. And oftentimes you could be optimizing yourself out of something that you haven't given a chance to see how it actually works. You could be looking at things, with blinders on and actually kind of miss the sort of connectivity between a customer decision journey. How someone discovers content, how they're affected by it, the other things that it leads to thereafter. It's hard. There's companies like Simple Reach that we've partnered with that have a very interesting way of tracking the I don't want to call it virality, but how content travels and what the impact of it is, and it allows you to sort of understand what's working to that you define it, so you can know when to turn the volume or when not to, and how that connects to other things. There's a tremendous amount of packages that we look at. Obviously, we use Google Analytics for a lot of clients as well. But how you connect yourself to paint a picture, and it's a mosaic, and it's never going to look the same for any brand or any campaign. But you have to have a sense of what you want it to look like before you go in. So when you see it on the other side, you could understand what might have shaped it or what might have drove different forms of it. And from there you learn and you improve and you keep improving each time. But if you look at it all in isolation, you miss something. And if you think that you've found the holy grail or the silver bullet through one metric that drove one thing, you're wrong because that's never the answer. There are no silver bullets.
Managing the mosaic. I totally love that. I'm going to steal that going forward.
Go for it. There's whoever's watching, you're all witnesses.
It's true. That's all right. I'll always cite you.
No,
It just sounds so cool. Managing the mosaic.
In that case, it's yours.
And I guess, Mike, just one question for you, right? As the guy who would love for Adam to spend all day with you, or 2 days, or maybe even 3, do you have a similar point of view?
By the way, Mike and I have spent a lot of time together.
Yeah, we spend our weekends together just pouring through Slate scores. It's awesome. It's so great. Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, so it is complicated, but there's more and more data. It's going to be one part audience, it's going to be one part creative, and it's going to be one part content. And obviously, we're very focused on the content aspect. But sure, I mean, you can overthink it. Sometimes you have to go with your gut. But I think the closer you can get to brand-oriented advertising success, and then tying that back to elements of those 3 things, content, audience, and creative, the more actionable it's going to be.
Cool. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I always learn a lot, and some of the things that sort of popped for me and what you guys talked about were, this concentration of content around your passion, Mike. I think is sort of fascinating and a real opportunity if, in fact, what's out there today is as diverse as it sounds like. So that's really interesting. And then also just thinking through what some of the folks have described in terms of the prevalence of mobile and social and how they're blending together, and sort of the ability to tap into creators or others who are sort of native to those platforms to take advantage of how to do well, or to sort of shortcut past some of the objections or concerns from folks who haven't tried it before. But I would love to give each of you the opportunity it can be a repeat of something you said earlier or something that's just popped to your mind, to have sort of one last word with the audience we've talked about a lot of things. If you were going to give them advice in 10 words or fewer of what you think is the single biggest opportunity for a brand to sort of think about as they go about trying to take advantage of more of the opportunities that are available in online video or in tapping into passions more broadly through digital, what might that be? And so, Mike, since you are a returning guest, I'm going to put you in the hot seat first because you've had more practice sort of doing this on the fly.
But less than 10 words. So
well, I'm not counting. So you be the judge. But this is the cheat sheet for all the people who are writing themselves a note about what they want to take action on or what they want to tell their colleagues we talked about.
Two things, and they're interrelated. First of all, if you're going to be here, and for most brands, it's getting to the point where you have to be here. You have to understand the space. So spend time in the space. Look across the passions that you may appeal to, but then pick a passion, pick a voice, be serious about it, and own it.
Cool. That's good advice. I like it. Adam, what about you?
How many words did I get? Sorry, I had to take a call.
No worries. The mandate was 10 words or fewer, but who's counting?
Know your audience.
I like it. Not wasting any extra words. That's good. Timeless advice.
We're all about efficiency.
Excellent. Hamish, how about you?
Yeah, I think know your audience and keep experimenting.
Yep.
Would be what I say.
Excellent. And then to close us out, Todd, your pearls of wisdom.
Yeah. I think it's to remain authentic to the platform and utilize it as a social media platform and utilize the fact that the audience does talk back.
Cool. I like it. Okay. The audience talks back. Be authentic to that. Keep experimenting. Really know and understand that audience and spend time in the space yourself. That's great advice. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who tuned in, and be on the lookout for the next YouTube Insights report coming out in October. And until then, you can check out our catalog at thinkwithgoogle.com/YouTube-insights. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.